I'm now about to alienate another celebrity. I have such a low opinion of now, which is ironic if you know his history with interns. Big, fat, multi-million-dollar check. Because what was really happening was a bullshit ambush. Hi, you guys, and welcome to Kathy Griffin, Talk Your Head Off. Please like and subscribe. No, seriously, it means the world. The comments under this show, Talk Your Head Off, have been overwhelmingly positive, so thank you for that. It's actually incredibly refreshing. I really am thrilled that when I did an episode about being afraid to tell my own agents and managers that I can't cut my next special from 2 hours down to an hour because of various reasons. And like 95% of the comments were, no, we want to see the whole version. I want the Kathy Griffin cut. And I just love that anyone even floated the phrase Kathy Griffin cut. So this show is going to be another episode that alienates celebrities from me, because as you know, that's how I built my brand. Other celebrities not liking me and really letting me know all about it, letting me know exactly how they feel. I also just want to tell you guys, I have 4 dogs. I'm a happy dog mom. One is missing, but typically when Nick gets here, and this is Nick who does Trixie Mattel's shows, and Trixie Mattel is still banned from this show. So I want her to know, banned for life. Okay, we're actually friends. Still banned for life, because I'm always banned from shows and I never get to ban anybody. And just once I wanted to be the banner in chief. Prior to me taking this seat on my couch, the doggies are always just here. It's like they see Nick and then they just take their places. In show business, it's called hitting your mark. And these 3 are hitting their marks beautifully, and yet I may be saying things that are shocking to poor Nick. These are actually Nick's therapy dogs. I just keep them and love them and take care of them. I'm now about to alienate another celebrity. I would like to tell you the story of the one time I was on the Stephen Colbert show. So it's The Late Show, and he took over the David Letterman slot. A little backstory on that. I was banned from the David Letterman show for 10 years after my first appearance because I said the word shit. And even though I knew they would bleep it, it turns out that David is such a prude, which is ironic if you know his history with interns, allegedly. And David is such a prude that he was so offended that I swore that I was then banned from the show. And the audience loved it because they knew it was a little bit naughty. So for years after that, I tried to get on the show because I actually am a huge fan of David Letterman and I really loved his show. And as a guest and as someone who does a lot of talk shows, I felt like when I did Letterman, the bar always had to be raised. So I'm first chair only, and I refuse to do second chair on any show, no matter how big it is, only because, if you guys know me, it took me decades of grinding out work and grinding out comedy and being on TV shows and having my own shows and winning awards and not winning awards and grinding out more. And finally, I got to be the first guest on talk shows. And so now everybody in town knows that's my policy. Most of the people in town don't like me and don't like me because of that. But I just can't go back to second chair because I just know if I go back to second chair, I'll never be first chair again. That's one of the many, many reasons I'm on a very limited number of talk shows these days. But when I do go on a talk show like Kimmel or The View, I feel the love because they let me be first chair. I am a big fan of Stephen Colbert's, and I think he's obviously very intelligent, and I loved the Colbert Report. So nightly, I would watch The Daily Show and the Colbert Report, and I thought it was even funny that he called it report. We Americans would say a report. Okay, so I understand why Stephen Colbert got the gig, even though I would have preferred a woman of color, and there are so so many women of color that are qualified, if not more qualified, but that's not who makes the decisions in our world, is it? It's old white guys, and apparently it's not changing, and certainly not during this administration. I digress. The reason I was a guest, or I was being pitched by my then publicist as a guest, was I was about to play Carnegie Hall. I'm very proud of that because I hold the record for the most times that a single female comedian has played Carnegie Hall, 6 times. And it's a magical place, and every show is special. I love being on tour. I love every theater, but Carnegie Hall is magical. I mean, it's magical in its own way. And the way the audience shows up is just different. They get dressed up. It's more of an event. It's Carnegie Hall. It's historic. I think of the great Joan Rivers and the other women who have gone before me and played that incredible house. It was enough of a reason to get me booked as first chair on the Stephen Colbert show. So when you do a talk show, you work with a segment producer, and they're called seggies. And so I have worked with many seggies over the decades on many shows. And, you know, some are fun and some don't get the jokes and some do. And some are scared of the host. Like on Letterman, the poor seggies were always scared shitless of David. And David was very moody, allegedly. Well, I don't have to say that. He was moody with me too. And yet there were times when I could just fall in love with David Letterman. Like I would be scared of him one minute, and then I would be like, oh, I just love him. His former girlfriend is named Meryl Marco, and she co-created David's daytime show. He had a daytime show first, which is wild to think of David Letterman during the day. Like that was a bad call on somebody's part because he was so perfect for late night. She invented or co-invented bits like stupid pet tricks and stupid human tricks and many elements of the Letterman show that went on to become iconic. And they had a love affair for years. And I just want to say in her defense, as far as I know, when they broke up after years of being together, the only thing she got was the house that they shared in Malibu, which is a nice house, but it's not like a giant ranch or mansion or what you might expect from, you know, one of the biggest names ever in show business. And I have this fantasy that's not going to happen because I don't think David's this type of guy. But if I was David Letterman and I was that rich and successful, I would just write Meryl Marco a check for $50 million. I'm not even kidding. And I would write a second check for the taxes that she would have to pay for the gift of $50 million, which are 50%. Because she was with him in the beginning and they did a lot of that stuff together and he knows it. I'm just putting it out there, David. You're gonna hear about this somehow and I know you'll curse my name, but don't be such a cheap bastard and write Meryl Marco a big, fat, multi-million-dollar check. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. That's all. And because you can afford it. You can really, really afford it, David. Looking right at you. I know. So avoid me at parties because I will say this to your face and you know I will. Okay, back to Stephen Colbert. I was really excited to be first chair on Late Night with Stephen Colbert, and I had met him one time. And one time I was backstage at the Emmys, where I was a nominee. Maybe I even won that year, I don't remember. But I was excited to meet him because I'm such a fan. And I'll never forget, he said, "Hello, Miss Griffin." And it was one of the first times someone called me Miss Griffin that is like in my age group. And I just loved it. I thought it was respectful. And I know a lot of women don't like being called Miss something, you know, their name, but they feel it ages them. I don't know. I actually thought it was really sweet. So I went into the experience thinking he was a sweet guy and a smart guy. So that's what I thought. I get on the phone with the segment producer, and what they do is they don't tell you what to say, but all hosts are different. Some hosts really roll with however the conversation goes and wherever the conversation goes. And some hosts really like to know exactly what the question's going to be and kind of have an idea of what your answer's going to be. So I don't want to say talk shows are scripted because they're not, but some are pretty close to being scripted and some are pretty close to being really unscripted. And of course, you know, I have a preference for the more unscripted variety of show. I had a nervous segment producer, which I thought was funny because I said to him, you remind me of one of the Letterman seggies because you're nervous. And I said, I'm so proud to be playing Carnegie Hall again. I can't believe I'm a girl from Forest Park, Illinois, with no connections to show business. I'm not a Nepo baby. I wasn't even on TV till I was 36 years old. And here I get to play Carnegie Hall again. So I would love to talk about that, what that means, why it means so much, what it means for women, what it means for women in comedy, what it means for women in show business, what it means for women in business. Because I'll say it again, kids, it's show business. Don't forget the business part ever. The segment producer was nervous about whatever I brought up. And I said, I have one request. And I don't think I've ever done this. Certainly not when the stakes were as high as the Colbert Show. But I said, if I could make one request, I don't want to talk about the Trump head picture. And the Trump head picture had been released, I think, a year prior. And I said, I have spent the last year dealing with the fallout from that photo, which is covered by the First Amendment. I've been fully investigated by the Department of Justice. I was interrogated under oath, et cetera, et cetera. I made a movie about the whole experience. You can watch it tonight. It's called Kathy Griffin, A Hell of a Story. You can rent it. I think it's even free. He said, okay, great, we won't talk about the picture. And I said, oh, thank you, because I have really talked about that picture as much as I want to. And I'm really tired of hosts saying, what were you thinking? And, someone like Stephen Colbert certainly understands the First Amendment better than most. And I really appreciate it. We went over a variety of topics. I don't think anything from my act, but I wanted to make the audience laugh. There's a live audience there and you want to make them laugh. And obviously you want to make the folks watching at home laugh. And this was prior to the streaming world blowing up to where it is today. So TV and a TV show like this was still a really, really big deal, a bigger deal than it is today. I'm just being honest. I get styled because I can't dress myself. So I had a stylist help me pick out the perfect dress and I had it altered within an inch of my life. And I picked the perfect shoe and I had the body tanning lotion on. And I was ready for this great first chair position on Colbert, and I was ready to go out there and dazzle that audience and do my best. Then it's the day of the show, and I knew it was a big deal because I was with an agency and I love when they make their little dog noises. I don't know if you heard that, but she just went, again. The head of the agency came to support me, and that is kind of unusual for a D-lister like myself. And he was there backstage with me to say, you're gonna do a great job. And a couple other people that were important people in my representation who get 10% of everything I make, they were there. And I thought, okay, this is a big deal. This is like when Letterman was here. So I said, I'm ready. And it went well with the Seggy. And I've got all my topics. And I'm really excited. And I think this will really move tickets for Carnegie. And that's what it's about. And this will be great. So the segment producer, who I had talked to on the phone at length, runs in and says, he wants to talk about the picture. And I said, oh, no, we discussed this, and you said he agreed. You said he agreed, and we're gonna talk about comedy and things comedic. And let me tell you, if you go down the road of talking about that picture, it can get really dark. And the details about the fallout from that picture are dark as well. And, he knows that picture was covered, and he knows that my investigation was BS, and he makes fun of Donald Trump, and we all know Trump is nothing but a clown. So I think we're like-minded on this. Go see if you can talk him into letting go of talking about the Trump head picture. He went back And then he came back again, and now it's closer to the show starting, and Stephen didn't come backstage and say hi, welcome, or any of that. And by the way, that's common. Most hosts don't come up to you because they're busy getting ready for the show. It's not a personal thing. Like Letterman didn't do it. Some hosts do it. Chelsea Handler always did it. Some of my most fun times I've had with Chelsea are when she would come back and we would talk and have a little kiki before I'd go on her show, and we would laugh, and I just love her for that. It would actually help relax me. That's not Stephen Colbert's thing, at least with me it wasn't. Maybe he does with every other guest. Maybe I'm gonna find out he does it with every other guest. So the segment producer is now more nervous and saying he's gonna talk about the picture. Not he wants to talk about the picture, I wanna prepare you to talk about it, just he's going to talk about the picture. And I said, for the whole segment, I only have 7 minutes to try to sell all the tickets I can for Carnegie Hall and convince America that I'm funny and that I'm worthy of playing Carnegie Hall and that I've paid my dues as a comic and how exciting it is. And also maybe there are young women watching who don't know if they should be in comedy, and they'll see my old ass and go, well, maybe if she can do it, I can, and like that. So I'm just getting more nervous, and he's just teeing me up for, yeah, that's all out the window, honey. So all the time I had spent talking to him on the phone, out the window. All right, so I thought, okay, Griffin, you can do this. You've talked about the picture before. My own dog just yawned. That's how much I've talked about it. But if he wants to talk about it, try to distract him. So that was my goal, to try to talk about a different topic. So I go out there, I wave to the audience, just looking right at the audience, not looking at Stephen, because frankly, it's kind of more important to get the audience on your side. And some people don't, and I think that's weird, but these are human beings and they're there for a live taping, and it's exciting. And I've gone to live tapings and it's exciting. It was exciting before I had the opportunity to be on these shows, and it's still exciting. I go out, I take my seat, I cross my legs, I'm trying to look my best, I have a smile on my face, and then it starts. I think I started by either talking about Carnegie Hall or any topic other than the Trump picture. Then he goes in about the Trump picture, but he goes in hard.
2017.
My life changed forever.
It did. You took a controversial photo.
Did I?
And you experienced huge backlash.
He went with the line of questioning of the what were you thinking, and you must have known it was too far, and that sort of thing.
But would you do it again? How about that? Would you do it again?
You know what? That's a tough question. I don't know if I would do that.
I ask tough questions. That's what the show is. Welcome
to the
firing
real
line.
world.
Exactly.
It was a line of questioning that I remember thinking, wow, he has way more of a bias against me and my right to take that photo than I imagined in my worst case scenario that I had imagined when I couldn't sleep the night before because I was half scared and half excited. So now I have a split second, and I remember looking at the audience for a split second and thinking, okay, I can do one of two things here. I can either eviscerate him verbally, which I'm trained to do, or I'm on his turf, so I can just kill him with kindness and just kiss his ass. And I picked the latter because I was literally on his turf. It's his audience. They're not the Kathy Griffin audience necessarily. I mean, I'm glad they're, laughing at my jokes, but here we go. And his line of questioning was as if he thought he was on 60 Minutes or something, if that even exists anymore. And if you know that story, you know that story. I then tried to defend myself and appeal to him based on the First Amendment part of it.
I mean, the First Amendment is our commodity. It's how we make our living.
No, I understand.
And it's worth fighting for.
But I also remember thinking, kill him with kindness, big smile on your face no matter what. He kept going and kept going. And then the tears came. So I felt my eyes fill up, and I thought, oh God, no, anything but this, anything. But you're a grown woman who's a female comedian trying to prove that you can keep up with the boys. You cannot cry. There's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in comedy. Do not cry. But man, he came for me. Now, I know that picture was outrageous, and no man in the history of comedy has done anything as outrageous as that, or at least experienced the fallout that I did. The first part, I suppose, is debatable, but I guess I was in shock at that part of it. The part that here's this guy who's sitting at the desk. His name is in the title of the show. I respect him tremendously. He's so good at this job, and he's gonna come for me based on a picture that, in my opinion, was warranted, but also a picture that's been covered, a story that's been told by me on every network, in every media outlet you can imagine. That story was covered by political pundits. It was covered on every news show, every news channel, every newspaper, all over the internet, obviously. It was altered on the internet. It has been altered on the internet many times, memed, etc. It was an experience Stephen would never have the balls to do himself, in my opinion. It was something I don't think he could have survived based on his treatment of me at that moment. It's my guess that he would have crumbled under that kind of scrutiny. I just know that a guy like Stephen Colbert can get away with far more than a D-lister girl like myself. And when I felt the tears starting to come, I just, inside, I was dying. I was just dying and thinking, turn it around, Kathy, turn it around, turn that frown upside down. And so I am glad to say not one tear escaped my tear ducts, so I did not cry. I did not have a tear that was visible to the audience. I don't think the audience could tell that my eyes filled up. I do think Stephen could tell. It did not stop him. I did not feel he had any empathy, but I did feel he had an understanding of what was happening, and that's what made it worse. And I remember thinking, you asked me to be on this show. I'm a guest. This is your show. This is your world. Everyone here works for you. Probably most of them are scared of you for some reason or in some way. I'm now scared of you. Of all people, what I did was subversive, if nothing else. And I thought the Colbert Report was brilliant because it was so subversive. And I think that's why the show was such a hit. And my God, it was a nightly show. So just the volume of doing a half hour of political material a night was so impressive to me. And so for him to make the segue into talk does make sense, I understand. And yet for him to be coming at me that way and to see me almost lose it, to see me trying to keep it together, my eyes filled with tears. I have such a low opinion of Stephen Colbert now. He's not gonna hear about this, but if he does, he'll probably issue one of those statements saying I made the whole thing up and that I'm irrelevant and that he didn't know I was crying, blah, blah, blah. I'm like so used to guys making statements like that about me, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'll never be on the show again anyway. So I'm telling you the real story. I felt like the audience was actually quite loving toward me, and that could have turned. So I didn't do the best job on that show. I'm not saying I did at all, but if I did one thing, it was kind of play to the audience to the point where I didn't want them to be aware of what was really happening, because what was really happening was a bullshit ambush. But I thought that was such a low blow. And there's a thing in comedy called punching up or punching down. I'm very much on the D list. Everybody knows that. I named my show My Life on the D list. I never acted like I'm A-list. I never will. And Stephen Colbert is an A-list comic. He has accomplished just about everything you can as a comedian. And he's wildly talented. And he's obviously very bright. But man, what a dick. What a dick. And to go for me, of all people, just to me, it had such a it was so laced with misogyny, but that undercurrent of misogyny where he would probably be shocked to hear that anyone would accuse him of having an ounce of misogyny. But I just remember thinking he would not talk down to the guys like this. He just wouldn't. I don't think I've ever seen him treat any of the guy comics like this. My segment ends. I don't think the audience knew what happened. I think the audience was very loving toward me. I sat there and tried to take it on the chin and tried to look like a champ. And I do remember smiling the whole segment. I probably was too defensive at some point. I'm not saying it was a good segment. I was so thrown. I remember the segment ended. I got up. I don't remember if Stephen shook my hand. He probably did. Maybe he kissed me on the cheek. I'm not sure. And I walked off, and I remember I was about one step away from the desk, and then the tears came. But I was still smiling and waving, and I could feel them coming down my cheeks. And I thought, okay, I don't think this is reading. I don't think you can tell on camera. Just keep smiling and waving. And I don't think they can see the actual tears. So the minute I was behind the curtain in the wings of the theater, the executive producer of the show rushed over to me, which has also never happened in my experience doing talk shows. And the EP, executive producer, rushed over to me, saw that I was crying, and I just said, "What was that? What was that?" And he said, he just couldn't get over the picture. He just can't get over it. And I go, what's for him to get over? I don't understand. It wasn't a picture of his decapitated head. And he said, Stephen's really Catholic. And I go, what? What does that have to do with anything? I said, I was raised Catholic too. And he said, I think that's what it is. I just said, oh, okay. I can't make any sense of that. And then the executive producer said, I'm going to give you a beautiful edit, because this was on a double show taping day, which probably means it was a Thursday where they taped that night's show, and then Stephen probably has Fridays off, and then they would air the show the next night, giving them time to edit it. And I said, I really hope you do, because first, I was promised that I wouldn't have to talk about the picture at all. And then when I was told he was going to talk about it, I actually thought he was going to be on my side, and maybe we'd have an interesting talk about the history of comedy and the First Amendment. So what just happened has made me burst into tears, and I feel like a fool sitting here talking to you while crying. But I am just so, I'm kind of heartbroken. I'm kind of heartbroken. I really was such a fan, and was like, it was a dream to come on this show, especially First Chair. I did watch the show the next night. They did give me a beautiful edit. I don't remember verbatim everything that happened that they cut out. So, you know, if you watch it, you're not going to hear everything I'm telling you today. And I am just being honest to the best of my recollection. So Stephen Colbert, please don't be a dick again and sue me. I just wanted to tell folks the wildest behind the scenes stories of any talk show I've ever done. And now you know why I haven't been on that show since and never will be again. All right, I can sort of chuckle at that part. Okay, guys, I know this episode was a little heavy, but I promise to lighten it up next week. And once again, like and subscribe. I am not going to be on the Colbert Show, and so I'm on this show because of you guys, and only you guys. You guys are part of the show. I really appreciate your comments. Please let me know how you're feeling. Please get your friends to watch the show. It's all about views, they tell me, and I'm learning as I go. So thank you, and I'll see you guys next week. Mwah.